Hello and welcome to episode 628 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR. We're coming off of a Danny Dimes to the rescue kind of week. Yes, that's right. I was down bad, real bad in cash on Sunday, as late as halftime of the late games. I didn't have Jaden Reed. Jamar Chase buried me again. Calvin Ridley failed. Dave Montgomery was about to go off, but he left early with a quad injury. Luke Musgrave had gotten outscored by Dalton Kincaid. And my hero, the guy who was the king of my season-long / best ball portfolio last year, the guy who led me to winning the 3-3-3 buy-in best ball on DK, Daniel Jones, he had just one DraftKings point at halftime. But the thing that the spreadsheet socialists and the Sims and the algos, that things that they can't factor in, it's heart. It's gumption. You got to have a lot of heart, man. When you're down 20-0 at halftime to the worst team in the NFL, it's easy to pack it in, be negative, panic. But no. Daniel Jones, Mr. Dimes himself, too much heart, too much pride, becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to do this in a second half. 250 plus passing yards, 50 plus rushing yards, at least 2 passing touchdowns, at least 1 rushing touchdown. It honestly reminded me a little bit of a slate maybe, 5, 6, 7 years ago at this point, where I played Josh McCown in cash. He was the quarterback for the Browns. Dude broke his collarbone in the first half. I thought he was done. Comes back in with a broken collarbone and throws 2 touchdowns, gets like 20 DraftKings points. Just max heart, man. You just got to want it. So it was so insane. I mean, I was like stone buried. I get a huge outcome from Danny Dimes, get a huge outcome from Puka Nacua, who I'll get to with Silva on team by team a little bit later. But I was able to come back from the death with those 2 guys, win, 63, 64% of my head-to-heads, got across the line in all the single-entry double-ups. So really, really lucky, really, really fortunate. But a much-needed nice win here. One big picture thing, though, I was thinking about on quarterback. Obviously, Josh Allen was in an awesome spot, an awesome play home against the Raiders. But I do think the NFL is changing the way it thinks about defense, and I do think that matters for fantasy. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am no tape bro. I am no hands in the dirt football bro. This stuff is way, way, way out of my lane. But the following makes at least intuitive sense to me in terms of simple game theory evolution. So if you can follow me here. Step 1, data is outrageously clear that pass plays at the NFL level are more efficient than run plays. Step 2, defensive coordinators realize, why am I trying? Why am I so obsessed with stopping the run? That will just force our opponent into more called passes, aka more efficiency. Step 3, defensive coordinators begin to adjust. Maybe let's experiment with playing more 2 high safeties. We'll take away all the deep passes. We'll dare teams to do the most inefficient thing. Run it. Run the ball in 1st and 10. Just run more generally. Step 4, the fallout from that. Well, what would it be? Well, less attempted and completed deep passes, obviously. More rushing efficiency. More volume to short area wide receivers working underneath those 2 high safeties, I think, right? I mean, that was just my thought. So as quarterbacks like Mahomes and Burrow and Hurts to some degree, Lamar is different, but he hasn't been that great either. As these guys are contained a bit more, if they are, perhaps the separation gap from the mid and weak quarterbacks to the top ones will be tighter than it's been the last couple of years, right? Back to the way it used to be at the quarterback position. And honestly, on top of all this other stuff, maybe there just has to be some regression from the elite quarterbacks. I mean, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts have been so incredible. And they're still incredible. But there's a big difference between spending up at quarterback when the expectation is 25 to 30 versus when the expectation is 20 to 25. Because when the expectation is 20 to 25 DraftKings points from elite quarterback, well, I can get 12 to 18 from a streamer at quarterback pretty confidently. I mean, week 1, Anthony Richardson was the cheap quarterback. He went off. Week 2, Anthony Richardson was about to go nuke again at 6,300, gets a concussion after 18 snaps. Danny Dimes does go nuclear. So honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know if any of this means anything. I don't know if it will be sticky. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense at all. I just thought it was interesting to think about because, quite frankly, getting back to my roots in cash, which means leaning towards spending down at quarterback, is a more comfortable way for me to build personally. And if elite quarterbacks aren't going to consistently and predictably separate, perhaps due to changing defensive schemes, then yeah, I do think that changes DFS a ton, especially cash. Oh, on wide receivers. I mean, look, the Puka Nacua thing is obviously wild. And yeah, he was a good prospect coming out, second in the nation in yards per route run last year. Matthew Stafford is the wide receiver kingmaker. But maybe guys who play that role, that underneath role, that strikes me as better against these cover two schemes, Amon Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Puka, Keenan Allen. I don't know. I want to be real careful about drawing conclusions on any of this stuff because I am not an actual football bro. But again, I just think it's worth thinking through. Last thing on cash, it was a weird week in that you could do a million different things. I mean, nothing was too clear. Talked about it in the cash lineup review. You can always find that article in the DFS tab on the site. It's free. But I had like full blown 6v6s against other really good players, full blown 5v5s. And it's just so rare you see that these days. I thought that was cool. Maybe not the most profitable setup for me, but still cool. As for tournaments, a few quick comments here. First, when we have a really good projection on a guy and he's going to be sub 5% owned, I know it doesn't feel great usually, but I just need to click it blindly more. Like we had Daniel Jones tied with Josh Allen as the best salary adjusted quarterback play on DraftKings on this slate. And so I clicked it in cash, but not tournaments. And by the way, Daniel Jones was 2% owned in cash in the big $25 single entry double up. Daniel Jones was 2% owned. But yeah, going back to tournaments, I mean, when I won the 250K on FanDuel a couple years ago, the biggest differentiator was Rex Burkhead when he was on the Texans. I didn't love it. I didn't want to click Rex Burkhead, but we had a really good projection on him and projected ownership below 5%. I mean, it's always going to be worth it in tournaments. Second thing on tournaments from this past week, it was a little frustrating. I felt like I had some good GPP takes and teams. I made 7 teams. I had 2 Lions Seahawks stacks, one with Goff and one with Geno. I just thought people were overreacting way too much to Seattle's bad week 1. And then they get this awesome spot in the Coors Field of DFS, Ford Field. All the Seattle stuff was like 6% owned. So I felt good about that. I also played the Justin Herbert doubles, just no-brainer leverage off the 30% of people I knew would play. Josh Kelly also played a bunch of the Rachaad White Bucks defense combo, which hit in a big way. So yeah, it was frustrating to just get 2 cashes and no real sweats out of my 7 teams. But that's GPP bro life, man. Oh, Adam, I was only a 3v3 away from the million, bro. Next time, Yeah, I was a 3v3 away. Oh, last point on tournaments. Just a reminder that late news is always more valuable. We get the news that Akers is going to be a healthy scratch. Cam Akers is going to be a healthy scratch like 30 minutes before lock. If that news comes on Thursday or Friday, Kyren Williams is probably 10% owned at least, probably more. Instead, he's 2% owned in low stakes and only 5 to 6% owned in high stakes. So even if you don't love Kyren against the 49ers or whatever, and I didn't, honestly, but even if you didn't love Kyren against the 49ers, a real GPP bro would be at full 3.9 inches about getting the news so late. All right. Want to get into the listener questions here before I do. Reminder that if you have not upgraded from DraftKit or DraftKit Pro to in-season yet, you can do that by emailing us support@establishtheRun.com. We'll get access to all our projections, Silva's matchups, shows, context, tons more. And with that, it is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right. Appreciate the questions from everyone. Going to do 6 of them today. We'll get to more next week. Question 1 from Greg. He says, please give us an update on your vasectomy. Yeah, good question, Greg. So if you go to I believe it was episode 358, you will hear my trip report from my first career vasectomy last year. It was so absurd. One of my favorite episodes ever was telling all you guys about the play-by-play of my vasectomy. But anyways, the crazy thing is that now, after all that with the vasectomy, I really don't even think about it. Until Greg brought this up, I hadn't thought about it in months. If there has been any change in functionality, any change in performance, in volume, in dexterity, in POE, pumps over expectation, in PPM, pumps per minute, in ADOP, average depth of penetration, any change in exit velocity. If there's been any change in any of these, I either haven't noticed them or am already used to them. So, yeah, I don't want to say that the vasectomy is recommended because I really don't recommend it. Voluntarily messing with things in our bodies, if it's not necessary, I really, really, really don't feel good about that. Our bodies are amazing. But if stopping your swimmers is something that's important to you, as it was to me, then yeah, I mean, the whole vasectomy thing really ended out not being a big deal despite all my fears. Question 2 from DFS Amateur. He said, Jay Glazer dropped more breaking news for the old Sunday on TV instead of social media once again. Is this a be better, play like a champion moment, or does Glazer need to get out of the Stone Age? Yeah, so DFS Amateur here is referring to two massive fantasy stories that Jay Glazer has broken on Fox on Sunday morning, very close to lock, each of the 2 weeks. In week 1, like 5 minutes before lock, he reports that Rashad Penny is going to be a healthy scratch for the Eagles. Week 2, 20 minutes before lock or so, he reports Cam Akers is going to be inactive, a healthy scratch as well. No one else had this, either of these stories, the Rashad Penny or the Cam Akers. No one else had this until he said it on TV. So I think there's a couple things going on here. First, I mean, you got to give credit to Glazer. I mean, dude is unreal. He's out partying, doing MMA. Who knows what this guy's doing? Then he shows up on Sunday morning and beats everyone on some really amazing scoops. I mean, it's definitely alpha. He's not in the can I be the first to tweet wars or, Amari Cooper pulled his groin at practice today, which everybody knows and everybody can report on. He is the alpha getting these amazing scoops that only he knows he can sit on it until Sunday, 5 minutes before lock. I mean, it's crazy. And honestly, like not being in those first to tweet wars, it's probably better for his mental health / life. I've gotten a glimpse into what Adam Schefter's life is like. I mean, dude is literally on call 24/7, middle of the night. I mean, it's crazy. So Glazer's not in it for like the social media clout or social media race. What he is in it for, though, is his employer. I mean, that's clear. If Glazer tweeted this when he had it, I'm sure he knew this well before Sunday morning about Cam Akers. If he tweeted this when he found out about it, and by the way, Sean McVay said he told Akers on Friday and Saturday, so presumably that's when Glazer found out. If he had tweeted that, no one's going to watch Fox. No one's going to turn on the Fox pregame show. Instead, every Sunday, I have to watch the fucking Fox pregame show, which is, believe me, is incredibly tilting. It's a fucking horrific, miserable, mind-numbing experience. But I have to watch it just so I can be sure I see what Jay Glazer says. And that's how Fox makes money, by getting ratings, getting more money for their commercials, and then using that money to pay Glazer. So, yeah, it's old school, it's boomerish, but I'm sure Fox appreciates it. And for us, it just is what it is. We have to go boomer, we have to go full boomer, which is obviously fine by me as your resident tech lord / mayor of Boomtown. It's totally fine by me. Question 3 from George. He says, I see all over gambling Twitter these 10, 20, 50 unit big dick max whale locks being given out seemingly every day, but they never show their long-term betting record or ROI. Is it possible these gamblers are profitable in the long term giving out these huge unit bets? Yeah, George. So I think there's a spectrum of these sports betting bros that are out there. Some are just obvious clowns, frauds like Vegas Dave or whatever. That sounds like what you're describing in your question. Then at the other end of the spectrum, I mean, there's hundreds and thousands of these guys, of the guys I just described. At the other end of the spectrum, maybe 0.1% to 0.5% of them are actually very legit. And then in between there is just like some hellscape of various stuff in the sports betting, gambling Twitter world. I would just say this when you're trying to evaluate your question. I mean, your question is, are these guys actually profitable? I just say this: winning at pregame sides and totals in the NFL is probably the hardest market to beat in all of sports betting, right? And the limits on these markets is absolutely insane. I mean, if you could actually beat the NFL sides and totals market, there is no reason you shouldn't be unspeakably rich. I mean, you could go bet 100K on an NFL game on a side, no problem. More, easily more. So, whereas in props or other small markets where I think we have a bigger edge, if I can get $200 on a prop, it's a good thing. So, yeah, anyone who claims to be beating NFL sides or totals with volume, not just picking one off here or there, beating it with volume and by originating, not steam chasing. Let's just say I am very, 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 very skeptical. Beyond that, I'd give a couple more things to watch out for. I mean, anytime someone is changing units, it's a red flag for me. Like, oh yeah, I'm 2-6 this year, but I had 50 units on the one winner. Oh, and the other winner was a 5,000 unit gold star lock of the century winner. I mean, changing units is like the easiest way to fudge your record. I would also be wary of the people who are posting stuff that isn't actually available. Oh, here's a 20-star lock, Eagles -6.5. And then you go to the screen and the line is actually 7 or 7.5. Or the 6.5 is on some book that no one has access to that doesn't take any action. And so, in other words, picking off, let's say Circa moves Eagles to 7.5, and you give out Eagles -6.5 on Twitter on some weird book or some stale line. That's not actually winning to me, But look, I think most people know how this goes in gambling. The loudest people, typically, not always, but in my experience, the loudest people are the biggest fish. Actual gamblers know how hard it is, how winning at 3 to 5% ROI is a fucking smash. And getting to that point is insanely humbling and hard. So anyone going around screaming about how much they win, how much they're up, I mean, my read and what I do is just disregard them, period. And maybe that's too harsh, but just is what it is. Question 4 from Wene. He says, I think you've addressed this before. With several recent fan fights, Texans game, Bengals fan headbutt, Commanders game, when, if ever, is the earliest you'd consider taking your sons to an NFL game? Yeah, probably never, honestly. I mean, to me, an NFL game is everything that's wrong with our society encapsulated in like one setting. First, people think because they can drink, because they drink at an NFL game all day or whatever, they're allowed to act like complete asshole, buffoon clowns. And second, that sparks really nasty laundry wars. You root for Bengals laundry, I root for Browns laundry. I must hate you, and not just hate you and keep it to yourself, berate you, fight you, harass you. And it's the exact same as the political tension that we have in our country. If I root for the Democrats' laundry and a Republican says the sky is blue, I have to fight him. It's purple, you idiot. If I root for the Republicans' laundry and a Democrat says the grass is green, I have to fight him. It's red, you idiot, even though everyone knows that the sky is blue and the grass is green. So look, I'm sure that 95% of people who go to NFL games are good people, just looking to hang out, watch some ball in person, be part of a community. I get it. I get that I'm too hard on the laundry bros. I know. But I just don't have much desire personally to go to an NFL game, like whatsoever. I take my kids to tons of Nuggets and Avalanche and Rockies games. It's always a great experience. So, yeah. Question 5 from Dan. He says, how do you handle 1v1s that cost you big paydays? For example, Calvin Ridley versus Keenan Allen being the difference between 10th and 1st for me this past week. Do you just trust your process, choose contests with flatter payouts, be a goldfish, and just look forward? Yeah, I totally get the question, Dan. And I'd be lying if I said the tilt of decisions I get wrong don't still stick with me. But I think, especially for NFL, we just have to understand how small samples are and how much volatility there is in one game or even 1 month or even a season. I mean, Jamal Williams ran like the goddamn sun for an entire year. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown got knocked out inside the 5-yard line nearly every week last year. Jamal ends up leading the NFL in touchdowns. So, not every time something runs out against you did you make a mistake. In fact, you probably didn't. I would say two things. First, on the tilt, just try to breathe and understand that you made the best decision you could before lock with the info you had at the time. Hindsight analysis that adds in information we found out after lock is irrelevant. We did not have that info. Second, I would try to evaluate the decision you made rationally. Like for Calvin Ridley versus Keenan Allen this past week, I really, really, really liked them both in week 2. Obviously, no Austin Eckler, and playing Tennessee pass funnel was an awesome spot for Keenan. Ridley, the alpha in what I thought would be the week's second best game environment. In hindsight, perhaps we could say that Ridley's week 1 alpha role wasn't a lock to be sticky since Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne are all very good NFL players. Whereas we know Keenan Allen's target share is going to be really sticky week to week. But all that said, I mean, not sure if you saw the game, but Ridley was inches from a huge game. I mean, he got 8 targets. He had at least 2 that I saw that were really close to touchdowns, if not 3. And that's what I mean about NFL being so small samples, so variant. If Ridley just comes down with those catches, with those 2 catches in the end zone, I mean, you're saying what a genius you are for playing him over Keenan. Instead, you feel like you messed something up. So I wouldn't be worried about these little micro decisions that I think before lock, despite the results, were probably fine/right. All right, question 6, last question we're going to do today comes from Surfer Rosa. He says, you certainly share a lot about yourself with your audience. I remember one time you interviewed Ashley Jennings. By the way, that's Peter's wife, Ashley Jennings, and it was great. Have you considered asking your wife to do an interview? Would she do it, or is that a bridge too far? Yeah, the crazy thing is I don't even think I share too much on these pods and everything. I mean, if I came in here and said all the thoughts that are actually in my head, I'd be behind bars, maybe the death penalty. So, yeah, I just think being transparent and talking about my personal life it's just so clearly the right move for me. And I enjoy it more. It's probably from listening to Stern so much through my life. But yeah, even he mentions in Private Parts, the movie, which honestly is one of the best movies ever. But if there's going to be a connection between us and the audience, like we have to talk about personal stuff. So I'm not opposed to having my wife on, but I don't think she really wants to. We did that ETR party last summer at a bar in Denver. She came and she had a great time for sure. It was actually really fun, but I think she was a bit overwhelmed by how much all you guys know about me. And honestly, my bigger issue with her coming on is that it's harder than it seems to have a good/interesting show. Like, let's say I had my wife on. Things that are interesting, I think, are money, sex, stuff like that. Stuff she definitely doesn't want to talk about. And I don't really want to talk about publicly either. So it would turn into something like, boring. The questions would be, oh, so how do you handle Adam being so busy on Sundays? Or what's it like when Adam loses a Kia? To me, that's pretty boring/cliche stuff and not an interesting show. So as of now, Rosa, it's probably a no-go. Maybe for the final episode of the show, if we ever get to a final episode, maybe that's an idea. All right. That is going to do it for this week's solo pod. Stay tuned closely to this pod feed as we have a bunch more episodes coming at similar times over the next couple of days. I'm talking to Sam Sherman about waivers later this afternoon. That will be up. And then also the team by teams with Silva for week 2 takeaways. That will be up tonight as well. And then the rest of season top 150 show coming on Wednesday. So be sure you're subscribed to this pod and or on YouTube. It is indeed free. For producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.